This is the Creator Podcast with Jeff and Gus. I'm Gus, and today we have a special guest who I've known for a while, Animator Tony Dusko. Welcome to the podcast, Tony.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Nice. He's here virtually in our hearts.
That's right. Thanks for coming out and having fun with us today, Tony.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so I guess to give a little bit of background, people, wanting to know who is Tony, what does he do, what's up with him? You're doing like animation and stuff right now, right?
Right. Now, I guess the easiest way to introduce myself is I have an art background, but then I went to school for a couple things, and including biology and elementary ed, and so I was teaching fifth graders, and I started. I always drew a lot for the kids; they always liked it. But then I started doing some very simple animations to show them for dumb things like stop talking, or please stop talking. It's time for lunch, or it's indoor recess song I did. And they were just short, and I threw them on the screen on the projector, and they loved them. And then I started doing some for social issues that I kind of needed. Like I did one on diversity because I had a kid that was he was a little different than the other kids, and he was having a hard time fitting in. So I did a little video, not specifically about him, but just in general. And I mentioned that one because Sesame Street saw it through an online festival, and then they actually picked it up for the show to include in that season. And so ever since then, I do about one or two shorts for Sesame Street a year with them, along with maintaining my YouTube channel, which I call my animations for kids Notebook Babies. So that's the channel name too. And other than that, I do. I still enter the festivals, and working on. I do a lot of 2D and 3D, just depending on what project I'm in. If I'm doing a 3D, it's not computer-based, it's stop motion, so it's totally, everything's hand-built, which now I've done several like that for Sesame Street, where you build everything and then constantly have to get feedback every step of the way, as far as, is this right? Because a lot of times there people will find something that is kind of maybe not kid friendly that you never even thought of, like something looks dangerous in a scene, and and you didn't realize it. So it's interesting process working with them. But that's basically how I got started with animation. I studied painting and fine arts. I've been doing a lot of that as well. But Gus, okay. I think Gus, we met 10 years or more.
Yeah, it all started, I think, with an email. You found one of my toys.
And, I was at a museum.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I gotta have this. So I bought this thing because it was so crazy. And I'm like, so few people have a random craziness original feel to their art, that every time I find someone, like I just email them to see if I can just have a dialogue or something, or get some freebies, which worked out both ways with that. So yeah. So I was starting my animation, I think, by then, because I had a similar random drawing, I think. Not similar, but it's in a way it has the same spirit, I think, where I try to be like, myself and take chances in the drawings, and if people don't like it, then I don't really get too upset.
Yeah, I think your style has a charm to it, and it's definitely you. It's kind of simple at times, but it's still, with a few simple lines, it's you. and you could tell that in your animations as well. It's got the pace of yourself. I feel like it's totally you in a sense animated, and I think both of us really kept our child spirit, and I think that's probably what that similarity is as well. Being true to ourselves and keeping the child spirit. One thing I wanted to touch on, I think you might have skimmed over. Now I remember you told me a while ago, and I could be wrong, but weren't you taught some animation lessons by a guy who actually worked on all the original Sesame Street stuff?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said before, I'd email people just to see if they'll respond, and I was at Barnes and Noble reading animation article on this guy who I had admired because he did a lot of original Sesame Street shorts from the 70s. I mean, he was with them early on. And here I saw in the article he lived near me. So I emailed him, and we've been friends since. I go up there, and I went up there so many times, and just he helped me with, learning his software and that he uses, and I still use the same system to this day of how he works. And he's older now too. He's in his 70s, but yeah, I'm probably going up there in the next couple of weeks again to talk and just hang
Are we
out.
allowed to name drop? Can we name
Yeah,
drop?
yeah.
Or-
Paul Fairlinger, Fierlinger. Fairlinger. If you look him up on YouTube, you'll see a lot of a lot of classic Sesame Street stuff, as well as he was Oscar nominated for a couple things, and he's done full length, hour and a half movies, at least one or two that he did. One about a dog named Tulip, and that took him 3 years. He just does it, him and his wife. That's it. And he is a composer, but it's just them working. He draws, she paints, or colors it in, and he was a really good help to me, in many ways. In fact, Sesame Street asked him to do something for the 50th season of Sesame Street, which was kind of cool. So we'll see how that works out, because he was there. Because it was funny, because they didn't even realize he was still alive till I told them.
Oh, gee.
It was because so many aren't back then, that they were like, oh my gosh, here's one that was around. He's still around, and so it's kind of neat.
When is the 50th? Did it already pass, or is it coming up?
It didn't. The 50th episode, I think, airs like in a couple weeks.
Okay, so did they give him like a year in advance? Because it sounds
Well,
like these animations can take a few months, if longer, not longer.
They did. The problem is he had a stroke, or not a stroke, or he fell and got injured, and I mean, they had the contract to get it ready, and then he just wasn't able to do it. So maybe something in the future.
Okay.
But he's recovering. But it was bad timing.
Yeah.
But it was just, and he doesn't necessarily need the income, but it would have been, he was willing to do it just, as a, he did something called Teeny Little Super Guy. It was like an animation of a guy on a cup, and it was in the kitchen and set.
I remember that.
Yeah, he
I
did
remember
that
from my childhood.
Yeah.
He had like a real gravelly voice. He would he wrote egg beaters, right?
Yeah, they wrote. Yeah, you're exactly right. They wrote egg beaters, and they had, and the cups he painted on by hand, stop motion, each movement. So there was no computers at all. And so yeah, and it was set. So when I went to his house the first time, it was crazy, because I walked in, there was the kitchen for that show was right there in his house. He still lived in the same house.
Oh wow!
And he kept one of the cups in his kitchen. It's kind of neat to see. So we had planned. I was going to come over and actually help him, kind of make it modernize the process. with the cups and the stop motion and make it easier than it was when he did. But maybe one day we can still do it. It's interesting because in his day, when you did an animation, let's say you did a scene and it took you 8 hours. Okay, so you spent your day animating 10 seconds. Nowadays you can constantly play it back and see how it looks. In his day, he had to, it was all chemical photography, so he had to send the reel out and wait nervously till it came back. And he said a lot of times it would come back with you got a hair in the lens you didn't know for the whole scene.
Wow.
And you had to reshoot everything, and it was just it must have been. And he said it was nerve-wracking because he's in Philly, closer to Philly, and they had labs that did it, but you'd have to use, if he's on a deadline, he would have to use like next day couriers and stuff to get this film developed again, and he was animating on cells for a lot of his work, so you have to stack them up and then keep them till the film's good, I guess. And because if you have to reshoot, you gotta get all the cells, and by cells I mean when you're painting on like overhead projection plastic. I don't know how else, what other metaphor there is anymore these days. Kids don't even know what I'm talking about. You drew it on paper, and then and like in the old days of Disney, you had then you traced that pencil with ink onto these clear pieces of plastic called cells, and then you had other people painting the backs, the other side, and then the cells are what you put over the background, and the background you could see through the clear parts. And
I think those are collectibles now. I know like Disney and like a lot of older 2D animations, they'll sell individual cells.
Yeah.
For people that collect them at a pretty high price. And if it's something like 24 frames a second or something like that, I'm sure they have a couple thousand cells laying around that they could easily sell to collectors.
Yeah, Disney was 24 frames like Bambi, which is crazy because most hit television cartoons went to 12 frames per second because you can get away with it. But even so, I think I just wonder if a lot of them were just thrown out because they didn't realize that they would be valuable. But I know they do cost. A lot of times they'll sell them against the original background or a copy of the original background. Yeah, and it's pretty crazy that cell was in the film somewhere in 1/24th of a second of somewhere in Bambi. You can have that kind of original stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so I want to get back to kind of your animation style. A lot of the stuff. So I went on and I checked out Notebook Babies. It's really funny stuff. It's not my demographic because I'm an adult, but it's still got that level of adult humor that adults can appreciate it. But children, I'm sure, would find funny too. I think I just watched one where a tape dispenser puts a bunch of tape on his butt and sings a song.
Yeah.
I mean, that's hilarious. I would love that stuff. If I had children, I'd be like, "You're watching this because this is funny.
Yeah.
Put tape on your butt. That's the good stuff."
Yeah, I just recently did that one a couple of weeks ago. I was just driving in my car and I just I drew a tape dispenser character, and so it was in my mind. And then I'm like, I'm gonna have this dude sing about putting tape on his butt. I don't care. I'm just gonna do it. So, and he ended up having there's a stapler in there too. And the stapler tries to put one of his staples in his butt, and it doesn't turn out well for him. But yeah, and it's funny because the people who like it are always like pretty cool.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment then.
Yeah.
Because I know you were saying initially when you first got started, it almost seemed like you needed, or not needed, but when you would make an animation, it was almost out of necessity. It was to teach a lesson to the kids or to get them to do something that otherwise wouldn't be as fun. So you talked about, teaching them about diversity. That's almost like, there's a need for this animation. I'll make the animation and it'll help things. Is that seem to be the case of kind of out of necessity for wanting to teach children different life lessons and things like that?
Yeah, I like to. I taught fifth grade, so there was always a lot of drama with friendships. So, and especially with the girls. So I ended up doing a lot of friendship animations, and for that reason, and getting along with and including others, and just because I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was learning lessons in my classroom. I was learning solutions. And then it started becoming, okay, I was then going outside my classroom with this channel that maybe I could help others, and then have maybe teachers could use them too to help. Because the diversity one, the only thing different about the kid was that he had a mullet, and, and the kids kind of were making fun of it, but the one kid, I said, I like your hair, and he said, yeah, thanks, it's a mullet. And I said to Sesame Street, should I keep it as a mullet? I mean, are kids going to know what that means? And the producer at the time says, you keep it in. She's like, keep it in there. It'll give something for the parents to appreciate. Which is, I think why Sesame Street has always been so well received is because it's one of those shows that there's, like you said, and Gus had mentioned, there's something, if you put something for the parents too, I think that increases your chance of it being successful.
Yeah, for sure. What was I gonna say? Well, yeah, we worked on something together, kind of, Tony and I, because I would always, and the way this kind of started is we started hanging out and talking about animation, and you're the first person to ever show me modern animation stuff. Like I learned animation when I was a teenager, but you made a pretty big impact on my life because I've been using touchscreen, what is it even called? Those stylus pens on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
and I never learned that before. And I know it's not a huge thing in a way, but for me it meant a big deal that you showed me what kind of computer to get and what programs, and whenever I do any kind of packaging or anything, I always think of you. Like you showed me that, and I think that was awesome of you. But yeah, we would hang out and just have a lot of fun. And you lived in such a. Do you still live in the same town?
Yeah, I still live in the same town, and it's funny, you lived two towns over, which was, so we met at a restaurant, and I had brought my my draw on tablet with me right to the restaurant, and you were like, I'm like, this is all I use. This is my whole studio.
Yeah.
And you were kind of like stoked because I had it, like, I just pulled it out of a bag, and well,
Yeah.
I had to work mobily because, working full time, I had to, if I went somewhere, like anywhere, I had to always, on a deadline, have to be able to work. And in fact, I finished one Sesame Street short when I was at Disney World with my family. We just coincided, and I'd work through the night while they were sleeping.
Oh wow.
And, yeah, it was because I had to get it done, but it was able to because of that technology. And I think back to what Paul had, my friend from Philly. He had this humongous monstrosity of a camera that he had to actually cut a hole in his ceiling so he could zoom out. That's how high the thing had to zoom out. And to take these pictures, he's paid $100,000 for it, and for this camera. And if it's a famous camera that they all had, and if I remember it, but it was the size of a Volkswagen. And it's funny,
Oh, jeez.
because when it was so sudden, he said, that animation went computerized, that he couldn't give it away. He offered it to a college for free.
Wow.
And this thing that cost as much as a house, he just couldn't give it away. It that fast, animation changed to computers, and it became obsolete.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, just in any career like that where your whole life could be switched in a second. That's something I think about a lot with everyone's always saying like, robots are sort of taking over everybody's job. And
Hmm.
I feel like a creative type is probably the last standing, just about one of the only last standing jobs is a creative, I think.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, AI, artificial intelligence can beat a chess player or whatever, but you know, finding that human creativity, I like, the kind of style that we have where you're just tapping into that strange haphazard randomness of life and events, and you look at a coffee maker and next thing you know it's running down the street. And I just don't think that, like you said, artificial intelligence is going to be able to capture that in in any way other than
Yeah,
some kind of formulaic, you know, um,
right.
3D whatever that comes along.
Well, what's funny is like I watch a lot of stuff. I watch a lot of animation and I'm sure a lot of people love this one and you probably guys have heard of it. Have you guys heard of Klaus? Or I think it's Klaus, the new one.
Yeah, I actually I started following the one of the main guys that started making that on Facebook years ago. I have to say it was like 6 years ago, and he was posting like concept art and some little videos and stuff, and saying like, "Hey, here's a new project I'm working on." And I thought it was just like a small little short that this guy was working on, and then I actually saw the trailer for it the other day. I was like,
Hmm.
"Holy crap, that's that video that guy was talking about this new project he's starting on." And that was like probably, yeah, that was a while ago, but yeah, I'm excited. It looks like a really, really cool animation
Well,
style.
it's beautifully done. It's beautifully done. What I'm about to say is not going to be pleasant, but I have a way of I'm going to say it. So it's like there's incredible things about it, and I'm not knocking that at all. It is very beautiful, but at the same time, and this happens to me a lot, and this is one of the reasons why I do what I do is if computers made their own movies, as Tony was talking, I was imagining there's going to be a future where it says the first the first AI movie, like it's just going to make itself. There's going to be nobody involved. You know it's going to happen at some point. Um, I feel like there's going to be these things in it where you've seen it before, and watching that movie Klaus, because I've been hearing all the hype about it. Whenever I hear hype, I almost put on my judgment goggles more so. But a lot of the characters, it just felt like I've seen this scene before. I've seen this character's expression. I've seen everything about this before, where it was not surprising to me. And that's more of a story and a more of a dialogue thing for me, and more of a character design for me. Um, but I feel like that's what's going to happen if that ever goes in that direction, where it's going to be this like I don't even know how to describe it, but it takes away the let's experiment even weirder with how we do dialogue and how we do expressions and how we do character design and that kind of thing. Because it almost felt like a Disney movie at some points.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Can see what you're talking about.
But there is these little treats in it, like, and I didn't watch the whole movie. I just shut it off because I was like, I've seen this too much, like this scene and this, and it just felt
Hmm.
like it almost felt like it was writing itself, where I didn't need to watch it. I was just like, don't need it, you know. But at the same time, they are doing new things in animation in it, and I appreciate all of that for sure.
You know, so much of animation on Netflix has the same
Yeah,
formulaic style to it, like that My Little Pony, flashy animation, or finished 3D, big-eyed animated characters, and it's all the same and nothing. It's nothing original. And what's funny is, remember when we worked with Todd Fisher,
Josh Fisher. Yeah,
Josh Fisher? Well, he's head of development at Netflix.
not
Chil-
anymore.
okay,
He was. He was.
okay,
He was short lived, I pitched to him, but he was the little kid section,
yeah,
and now he's independent and he wants to do his own projects. I
okay.
already yeah.
Because I pitched my stuff to him,
Mhm.
and he said there's just not a market for him for things that look hand done because it doesn't sell globally.
Right.
Other everyone wants this shiny crap that just sells to kids. It's like sugary treats almost. Look in for a metaphor, and I just it makes me angry a bit because
For sure.
how much I like the hand look and animation, and it's you're really stuck in the festival circuit right now, or Sesame Street, because no one else has the guts to put something like that on television. It's a shame. I mean, Amazon has Tumbleleaf, which is kind of cool looking. It's all stop motion, but other than that, and
Yeah.
that came right from Josh, and he was frank about it. I'm like, I appreciated the honesty. I wasn't, angry at him, but because it came from his whole team. But I don't know if the pendulum will swing when people will get so sick of the same cookie cutter 3D nonsense.
I think so. I mean, the fact that there's guys like us out there who do what we do, and I'm always a believer in good things. So I think there will be that change again, where I think things will always change, and there'll always be people fighting against almost that auto, like, let's do it this way kind of thing. Because my whole career I struggled with that kind of thing too, where I pitch things constantly, all kinds of things, and you got to fight your way in. And once you get there and people realize it's great, then they're like, yeah, it's been great the whole time.
Yeah, I know.
It's like one of those weird things.
I was going to mention that about like the big studios, they're not willing to take that kind of risk. I mean, a lot of the bigger studios, for some of the larger projects, like Trolls and things like that, it's basically, they're spending millions, if not billions of dollars, and expecting to get that in return. And I just don't think they want to take the risk on something original that they fear might flop, because they have you mentioned, AI working from a formula. They have formulas that they're using for every movie they make. They have, check some boxes to make sure that it's safe. Oh, this worked in the past. Let's use that scheme again, because we know we can make a lot of money off it. Hey, Cars 1 did great. Let's do Cars 2. Cars 2 did all right. Let's make Cars 3. And then
planes.
Yeah, planes. But yeah, so I think it's their unwillingness to take risk, which is scary. So hopefully, like you're saying, like the smaller circuits, the indie kind of circuits, and even potentially Netflix, where there's maybe some lower budgets, hopefully some of that more original work can start making its way to the mainstream.
There is things happening, and I was going to say to Tony and both of you, I'm trying to get this contact at HBO that the guy knows who I am, and he said say hi to Gus. So maybe we could talk about this later, but they're looking for $1 to $5 million experimental animation, features, and I'm definitely trying to get a hold of this guy who knows who I am, and we met at some point, but I think he switched companies at the same way Josh did. These guys always change out, but it was cool to hear that, because I think somebody like HBO and even Netflix and all these competitors, I think at some point they're going to be willing to give a shot at something, whether you prove yourself with your YouTube channel, when you reach X amount of views and X amount of subscribers, and thank God there's YouTube where we could be independent completely and do things like that. Now I know they got kind of greedy, right? Like, how's things been going for you with YouTube?
But my films aren't long enough, and I can't do them fast enough for the algorithm to pick them up.
Okay.
So like if you're not doing toy videos that you're doing, one a day or one every other day, and they're not the magical like 10 minutes long or more, it's not advantageous for them to pick them up, because they're not going to get their ads in it. So I've been struggling with trying to even get them to feature them anywhere on there with any other video. So yeah, animation like mine that takes so long to make, like even that tape one, I said I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna do it and get it done in a week. See if I can do it, and I could. It took me 2 weeks, and you've seen it. It's as simple as it looks. There's just going through with the lip sync. Holy cow! It's just like it's frame by frame still. It's the way I do it, and you're
a one-man show, right?
It's just me, and that's it. And so I get the song down, then I go upstairs and do the animation there, and then you have a lot of the finishing touches take a long time. You have to do the walks, and then you had to do the eye blinks, and then just if something's not right, you could keep working on it even, but you have to say, okay, I'm done. I can make it more squash and stretch and all the other components of animation, but so 2 weeks that went out, but even that's not quick enough for them.
Well,
so
I was going to say on two notes, bringing a nice beat to everything is one, you should definitely put your stuff up on Instagram, and I know a lot of the future is going to TikTok. I don't enjoy TikTok; it annoys me, but it keeps growing, and I could see it's perfect for 30-second, 60-second thing. The same thing with Instagram, and you can get a ton of views, and then what will happen with that is you'll get followers who will buy stuff from you when you have it, or maybe if you need money for a film, for a Kickstarter, they'll come and they'll support you. So I think Instagram is beautiful for that, and I would definitely post all your stuff there. Not all at once, but like once, a day or once every few days, and use the right hashtags, and you'll get a lot of that.
Yeah, I started doing that this summer, and it's tricky because you have to take my movies, which I do 1080 by whatever, television format, and turn them into a square. So some of them you lose important parts.
Well, and they're fixing that too. They have a thing called IGTV, which you could do it widescreen if you need it. And same thing, I think they're regular videos, you could do that now too. I think you could import it, you could see the whole video wide. It just has there's definitely ways to do that now. I was going to say too is we didn't really get into, but we sort of worked on a project together, which started with me because I would always bug you about the town you lived in. I loved the name of it, and I'd always would try to get you to do something with me.
Because one day you came over and let's get a pizza. So we're like, and we'll call our town Dorf, and because it sounds very similar to that. It's such a ridiculous name and ridiculous people. And we're like, we get the pizza, then we drive down a one-way road the wrong way. And we had like the whole town with pitchforks like screaming at us, like chasing us. Remember that?
Yeah, and it was in your Jeep.
In the Jeep, and I think I had the top down yet. And so we could hear all these people. And we're like, let's get the hell out of here. This is crazy.
They knew you were an outsider.
Yeah. They knew we didn't belong.
Yeah, so we would kind of joke about that, and I remember we were watching a football game, and that's when I had you at my place. I think it was the only time, and I
don't think you had heat. I don't think you had heat.
I barely did. Yeah, I was living terribly, and I'm living a lot better now than then. But it was rough. But I remember I get you to do little drawings, and any little drawing you did, I would say that's part of the show. That's part of the show, and you'd be like, let's give him a watch. And it's like, okay, sweet watch. And so we made this thing called Dorf. It's a really weird show. It doesn't feel like anything I've done before. I feel like it really doesn't feel like anything you've done in a sense before. Mm-hmm. And I think I animated the whole thing for this weird, almost documentary style thing. And then we got Rita, this agent lady, Rita, who knew you and knew me, and she's like, I could pitch this, and she pitched it, and Josh Fisher, who knew of me, he loved it, and he made sure that Spin Master took it. And what's funny is that's a very independent, very crude thing. We had another episode that you were going to help me on, but you got too busy, so I had to do that one. I had to animate it pretty much myself, which I suck at animation. But now we just signed on an agent guy who I met even years earlier than Rita. He's going to be pitching that show for us, which is funny, which would be funny. That's what happens. Like we finally get that show made somehow.
Mm-hmm. That would be cool.
Yeah, earlier
Yeah,
today I actually signed the agreement that he could pitch it for us. Funny enough.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, I remember that I drew a penguin because I had drawn it in my classroom that day. A penguin
Yeah.
who wears a jetpack. It was a character because I was teaching the order of operations in math, and so um, PEMDAS was his name because it goes parentheses, um,
Exponents.
exponents, yeah, and multiplication, division. So I used the acronym to come up with this penguin called PEMDAS because so they would remember that, and then so that's what I drew that night. We were watching the Eagles, and then he became one of the main characters, I think, didn't he? The penguin.
Yeah, Jetpack Jim, who
Yeah.
the story we have is that there's a guy named Richard Desi. I don't know if we said his last name or not, but Richard is a blind inventor, and and he makes for an injured Jim who's like stuck to something. He makes him this jetpack so he could fly again. So then they're best friends, and they're both kind of crippled in a sense, and they're both there for each other. So it's a good friendship bonding kind of thing, and a good buddy thing. And then everybody in the show is really bizarre and weird, and
Emmy Boss did voices for that.
yep. Emmy Boz did the voice for Soupy Sue, and a couple other ones that were cut out of the Spin Master. What they wanted, they cut out. Like there was a strange guy who said he loved to stare at the sun so he could see spots, and then he said like his dirty trick would he doesn't want to flush, so the next person has to deal with it.
Yeah, that stuff I imagine they would want to cut out for kids, right?
Yeah, I guess staring into the sun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey kids, look at the sun. Yeah, because Tony, you're saying at the Sesame Street kind of put the kibosh on some of those things that
Yeah.
you know.
I had a crayon cartoon, and they're just 5 crayons, drawing together. It's stop motion, so I used real crayons, and at one point in the script, the yellow crayon's point broke off because he crashed with another crayon, and he goes, "Oh snap! Is that is that my head? My points fell off," and it made it like through like 10 meetings, and I'm like, because my producer, who I'm friends with, really liked it too. And we were both like, let's see how far it gets. But like one of the last meetings, they yanked it. I was so
man.
pissed. And they thought that snap sounded too much like a curse, like someone
Really?
cursing. Yeah,
That's
it wasn't that
pulled
as
it. Wow.
yeah, that's what pulled it. And
I don't like puns, but that's hilarious. It's just
I thought
that's great.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It's hard to stay funny with because so many of the stuff that they find they change it, and it's just like you try to hold on to as much as you can by the end of it.
Right. Well, the second episode Spin Master paid for of Dimple Dorf, and I remember, and I think I might have talked about this on the podcast before. I'm not sure, but they gutted it so much, and they kept changing it, and all these different voices came on, like do this, do that, do this, and it became no longer fun for me. I was just like, I'll make this, and hopefully people will like it. And I think that's a terrible feeling when it gets to that point where you're like,
Yeah,
I hope they like it. I don't like it.
yeah,
I made it, but I kind of hate it.
That's that kind of design by committee kind of thing, which is sometimes hard to deal with.
yeah.
Too many
That's what-
too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing, where everybody's getting paid to suggest changes. So if they don't do anything, then why pay them?
yeah, and it's probably more with kids shows. Maybe I don't know, like South Park stayed funny, but it's very adult, so it's probably why there was like a few lines that weren't crossed, I think, with that show.
And you're saying so when when you're dealing with Sesame Street, are you pitching them an idea, or are they coming to you with a concept of when you want to teach the kids the number 5?
Yeah, but believe it or not, I still have to pitch like everyone else, and there's been years where they just didn't like anything I threw at them, and I went a whole year without anything. You have to wow them because you're going against. They reach out to you only to pitch. That's the only reaching out they do, and they're reaching out to companies all over the world. In fact, my producer goes to film festivals in Jamaica,
Wow.
Australia, New Zealand, just to find new talent. So your pitch has to be like just. I've learned that if it can be visually beautiful and appealing, you have a better chance of getting it, even if your script is crap and if you have just a kind of a cool idea and a great looking pitch, that's going to get you in more than having some kind of polished, finished idea. So that's the direction I go. So I just got one approved. So
Nice.
and
Um,
it's different than you know.
yeah, you're always changing it up a lot. I like that. Like I remember, you do the Notebook Baby stuff, but then you go in totally different, cool directions. Do you do these pitches in person, or do you just send it to them?
It's all set. Oh, it's all sent to them now. I do. I've gone there and met everyone. So finally, this past
Nice.
this past year, so now I know everybody. And it's cool because like I did a film on bunnies, these little stop motion bunnies, and there was I think the number was 14. 14's a bastard of a number. Because to fit 14 anything on the screen and then animate it, it started out as 11, and I'm like, all right, cool. Then they're like, oh, we made a mistake. It's 14. I'm like, oh shit. So I had to got to make a few more bunnies.
And
But
that was all stop motion, right? That's
yeah.
stop.
So
Yes, you gotta
and
fit
there's
that
three.
in frame is tough. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have safe zones in the frame, and then um, but it's kind of cool because I sent them the bunnies then, and so they all had a bunny on their like workspace,
Oh
which was
wow.
kind of cool. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's just real quick. Speaking of fitting them on the screen, their quality control dudes in the editing room have crazy standards and now it's even worse because it first goes to HBO.
Yeah.
It used to be just PBS. Now it's HBO also. Quality checking your work, and if you have a flicker or if I forgot to erase one frame of a, a rig or like you know when I say rig, I mean the bunnies when they're suspended in mid jump, they're hanging on by this wire
Yeah.
that I have to erase out frame by frame later. So if I forgot something anywhere, they'll pick it up, and then you have to get the audio. Audio is tough to get to specs, um, even harder than the image, to be honest. And then getting the colors to the way they want it, and let's say you've shot a whole scene. All right, it's taking you like all week, and everyone's agreed on it. And then let's say 2 weeks later, someone says, "No, let's change that." Can you imagine that? Because I already had the set taken down for that scene, and in my garage, I had to
Wow.
get you know, I was like, how am I going to get everything out, get everything set where it was, just to make this one change? Because they didn't like the order the bunnies jumped out of the cornfield. They wanted the order different of the bunnies, but I was able to actually do it digitally pretty convincingly, so I didn't have to refilm the scene, stop motion film.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Um,
about that. You're talking about changes, like, so I'd imagine that most of the changes coming in before you even touch a camera or start making sculptures or anything, right? I mean, like for instance, like yeah, you wouldn't want to be making changes after you spent a week
No,
doing stuff. So
they have meetings 2 days a week, and I try to get something in every meeting just to make sure, and after all these years, 10 years of doing it, Um, I pretty much I know I get a feel for what I need to get approved, before I move forward and invest time in it. And I did a film on factories. F is for factory, and so it was cool. Everything was cool. My characters were cool, and then at the last minute, um, all your characters need to have safety helmets and safety goggles. I'm like, how am I gonna do this? I struggled, but I found a solution. I made the helmet and goggle with one piece unit that I was able to glue on everyone instead of having to remake the characters. But it's just how one decision can just really set you back. It's crazy.
Yeah, it must be nerve-wracking in a weird way where it's. I mean, I feel like everybody's job has things in it that drive them crazy. Because I know I have mine, and I'm sure you have your. That's one of yours. It's interesting that like when you work for yourself or when you do a dream job. I think animation is a dream job for most. Uh, sometimes people might not realize how frustrating or how hard it could be when you're in the mud and doing it, and then you need to do these creative. That's one good thing that you're able to problem solve like that. I
Hmm.
think that, and sometimes under the pressure, you're either going to crack or you're going to find a really creative solution, and it's good you're
Yeah,
able to do that.
and every time I just write back, no problem, and then I I deal with it for a little bit. But you're right, that's the key, Gus. You hit it right on the head. And I enjoy problem solving because it's like I know there's a solution to this, and I'll find it, and I'll work it out. And I think that's why they come back to me a lot. Despite maybe they had a better pitch, maybe they didn't, but they know that I always pass quality assurance. They know I always do whatever they ask in a timely manner. I come up with the solutions. That's got to help me, I think,
Yeah.
maintain this relationship. So I think that does go a long way. I learned that early on is to just don't argue. You know, maybe they do know how much work it's going to take. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
Um,
They probably don't.
I think I think I think my main producer who I'm friends with, and she's pretty much in charge of everything. I think she knows, so she'll often, I think, try to let them know, this, can we just can we please just maybe just leave this in? But um, if her higher ups, there's some last dude that has to get his say in, who's usually traveling somewhere, and I think so I think she still has to honor that. But yeah, so far I've been able to get everything through, and it's funny because even when you get that last green light that film looks good, take it to post, and then I get out my other computer, my post computer, my Mac. It's old. It's like a 2010, but I have everything still set up on it to their specs, and then I just run it through all my tests, get the audio right, get the levels right. You have to watch how high you gotta watch your blacks and your whites mostly, and the computer will make everything color safe automatically, which is nice. You don't have to worry about that like in the old days. But getting it through post is it's a big sigh of relief when you finally say because until it passes quality assurance on their end, um, you don't get your paid. So, but I will say I went to New York and met the guy named Memo there, and he is super cool and he's so helpful in explaining things to me and the changes that are taking place. I'll ask him a question and he'll write the most eloquent email, like paragraphs of what to do, and he's just so really good, and which is a good thing because this is the first season now, 51, which this pitch I'm doing got approved for, where they're going UHD, ultra high def. So it's not full HD like 400 to 4000 something. It's TV HD, which is still in the shape of that rectangle that TVs are.
Mm.
But it does mean it's 4 times the amount of information now in every image. So it's gonna really tax my system. But
Oh wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that 2010 MacBook might be hurting.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, I do have a newer MacBook, which I'm gonna have to just end up biting the bullet and learning Premiere, because I've been using Final Cut, the old version, for so long. But I definitely think that thing will not handle the UHD. And
Wow.
yeah, and that's what they want. Even though they're not yet and might not yet published or broadcast in at UHD, they want to make the change now. So all final content has to be that size.
Yeah.
So
You're
we'll
gonna be
see
listening
how.
to this. You're gonna be listening to this one in like 10 years from now and go, huh? I remember it was only that.
I know. Now it's 30 times. I mean, we're gonna be past what the human eye can even see. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't like 60 frames per second. I hate it. I hate 60 frames per second. You notice that on TV?
Yeah, I don't like it either. I think it looks video-ish. That's why
Yeah.
24 is my max, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I agree. I like 24 as well, but I think the 60 frames per second thing, I think a lot of it is what you're used to, what you grew up with, and what you're used to seeing on screens. It might be interesting to see that, new generations growing up, if most stuff becomes 60 frames per second, that's what they'll know is normal, and they might enjoy
Yeah.
60 frames a second. But to us, it looks like a soap opera. So
Yeah, it looks like behind the scenes to me when I first saw it. It looked like a behind the scenes shot, which I never liked. I thought there was something much more artistic about 24 frames a second.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I just saw The Irishman, and and
60.
Scorsese's sticking to 35 millimeter film still, and there's only like a few labs that'll still develop it.
Oh, that wasn't 60 frames, that movie?
I think not if it was on 35 millimeter film. I mean, I could Wikipedia it, but
Yeah. I remember seeing a scene in that, and it bothered me. I don't know if it. I know some TVs will do it for you.
Well,
yeah,
They'll do a blur. They'll add it in.
They'll upscale it for you, and yeah, some TVs will do that. Some TV, my one friend has one of those televisions, and he'll do it, and everything looks like a soap opera.
Yeah.
Any movie, I swear, it looks like a home movie video, because the way it tries to upscale it.
yeah, I've seen that as well. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's not, and that's why, like, audio, I have to when I have do my audio track, I have to listen on several sources, because TVs have built-in audio filters too, that to enhance audio. So it's like I'll have something that'll sound really good on headphones, and then I'll listen to it on my TV, and it sounds like crap. And it's because of the different speakers and the different the ways that televisions try to improve and change your sound for you.
Wow. That's weird on the sound. I like that you are always keeping up with things, though, and I'm always trying to. I think it's important that all three of us, or for anybody, it's good to kind of go with the times, because you don't want to be behind and try to do this kind of stuff when you're 10 years behind or 20. It just...
No, that's a good point. In fact, Sesame Street emailed us a year in advance, so we could get our equipment. And luckily, my stop motion camera can do it, but
it's only a $100,000 camera, right?
Maybe when it was new. No, it was when it was new. They were like 3,000. It's just a still camera that everyone uses for stop motion.
The size of a Volkswagen.
Yeah, no. it's thank goodness not that, because my area is limited. My space is limited. I don't have a lot of room, which, again, it's funny because my models, everything, the scale has to be a little smaller, including the backgrounds and the characters, because I just don't have the room to make big sets. So
Yeah.
I think people will be surprised sometimes. Like you look at behind the scenes of like Kubo or Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline, and some of those models and sets are pretty darn big and bigger than you think. Because they had the space and it's easier to manipulate larger objects, I think. But I have to really work with the space I have.
It's funny you mentioned that because yeah, I grew up watching Sesame Street, and I don't know why, but in my head, I'm assuming that any of the animations or any of the film stuff that was shot is basically there's a big giant studio where all these artists come in and they work together like in this big studio. They'll set up their stop motion over here, or they'll do this animation over here, and then like that's how they all get their stuff done. But now it's like I'm you're peeling back the curtain for me. Maybe it's a good thing, but I'm like, so all these animators are just doing stuff in their kitchens and their garages and then
Yeah, that's what it
sending it
was.
in. It's so wild that that's the way
Hmm
it is. I guess it's interesting. That's how you get the different varieties of animation styles.
Yeah, in the 70s, an independent animator was a new thing, and my friend Paul was really one of the first to create this new job where you would do this stuff in your home, and the only people buying your work were back then were advertisers, like for like coffee commercials, because and ad agencies. So that is what Sesame Street decided. That was part of their original formula was they brought in these advertising agencies. They had that same formula where they wanted these interstitials in their show, kind of like commercials. And so they used the same animators that were doing commercials, but they used them for their show. And all of a sudden, these animators had more work, and that's what kept the show moving by using these. And that was my favorite thing about the show growing up too. Was it wasn't just one thing. It was these interstitials stuck in like commercials within the show, and it made it so cool. And it's also one of the reasons I loved the Tracy Ullman show when The Simpsons got their start, because
Yeah.
they were just tiny little shorts within a live action show. And I think that's one of my favorite things ever is when you can, when some people are brave enough to do that in a production, just all of a sudden break to a funny animation and then back to the show or something. So yeah, that's how it all started. It was based on that they I don't if you read some of the history of Sesame Street, they saw that kids were being bombarded with advertisements for toys and stuff, and they decided to use it, but for a positive way, that formula, and it kind of still sticks today. Now the show's now only a half hour. That change happened a couple of years ago. It used to be an hour, and it it made for less work, I think, less availability and less need for the animators, I think. But although maybe because they make more episodes, it evened out. I'm not sure really the math there, but
I was going to ask you, Tony. Now, are you putting any projects together that like you want to have your own show or your own film or anything like that? Do you try to do that kind of thing?
yeah, I pitched a lot of shows last year. I pitched about maybe 10 ideas to a lot of places, and like maybe at least 40 different places.
Oh
I
wow.
mean, I'm talking networks and production companies in other countries and stuff. Basically, anyone who goes to that kid screen that I
Yeah.
could find their name, I sent them, and um, I only got my producer from Sesame Street and I made a show called Jules and Jet, and the short's actually on my channel, but we got a we signed an option for that, similar to the document that for your show for Dimple Dorf. Gus. It's also a Canadian-based company, um,
Oh
because
cool.
because they for some reason if you produce an animated show in Canada, you can get availability of a lot more funding. And
Yeah, it's like they pay for half or something. Now,
yeah,
does the company start with a K or no?
uh, big Big Bad Boo Studios. They had an office in New York, so we met there.
Oh,
But
nice.
they yeah, so they're based in New York, but they operate in Canada as well because they have to, like, in order to get the Canadian funding, which is substantially better than here, and the resources they have, because Canada is one of those countries like Britain, and I think that respect filmmaking as an art form more than here. Here it's just like to make money and sell toys, whereas Canada Film Board is still about the art form. So a portion of the company has to be there, and a portion of the production has to be made there. Like,
Right.
so
Like
if it
writers
ever,
and stuff.
yeah, so if it ever does come to fruition, I would have to go to Canada for like writing sessions and stuff.
Yeah,
But
Canada's where it's at. Like that's the guy who's pitching Dimple for us. He's
yeah,
Canadian.
yeah,
And I have something else going on with Canada, so it's like there's so much happening there. It's interesting.
yeah, and it has to. It's. I know the one reason is the funding, and like I said, um, and it's probably. I think there's other reasons too why Canada is a place to, run a production company. Because
I think we're filming and stuff. I think taxes are a lot lower. I know that
yeah,
for
I was gonna
movies and things like that. I'm not sure how
yeah.
animation studios work.
Their government, I know, gives money for it. I heard that like they'll actually fund part of it. So
Mm-hmm.
same
I
thing
think,
with Mexico is the same way. I'm trying to get a film, a live action film done, and I've been trying to get a budget from Mexico, the government actually. So yeah, it's interesting that us Americans are going to the two touching countries, be like, hey, can we do something creative?
yeah, it is funny, but they'll still maintain an office like in Manhattan.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's one possibility. I
Nice.
think about it. I'm not. Yeah, my personality is not that, and Gus, we've talked about this before, where I like to do something, do a film, get it done, and move on. Like for me to do 21 episodes on the same using the same characters, um, that would bore me to death. I just would. That's not my makeup of person. I'm more of a. Unfortunately for me, financially, I just don't. My dream really is not to create The Simpsons or the next TV show. It's just only because I would burn out, so let's say this show does get picked up, and I would be a writer, and they would find the animators.
Yeah,
Because
that's ideal. I mean, I feel the same way. Like I want to sell a bunch of shows, and I don't want to be
right,
full time on it. I'd rather be a little bit
no,
more free.
animation's a pain in the ass, to be honest. What's fun is making the characters
Yeah, and the stories and
and the
the
stories,
ideas.
yeah, and even stop motion. It's fun carving the little. I actually was influenced by Gus and his carvings that led to a lot of his toys, and so I got into that too, starting sculpting. And for stop motion, it's really fun making characters come to life, and then you have this 3D thing in your hand, and that's kind of cool that it's there, and that part's really fun. And then the mechanics of it's working an armature into it, is kind of cool.
Yeah, I'd love to see your process with that. I mean, it's cool that I was able to inspire a little bit. Yeah, because I've never done an amateur or armature type of thing like that, and I would love to. I think that's I love stop motion so much. I think Lakia is probably the best company, unless I'm saying their name wrong, but I think they're the top notch.
Yeah, they've done Kubo, did something about a
Box
snow
trolls.
box troll. So they've done
Yeah,
all the really good
Paranorman.
ones. Paranorman, Coraline.
And Coraline's their biggest hit. Like they can't match that.
I think that they were at their all-time high there. I think Kubo was a little over the top. It just got too. But even Coraline, the heads are 3D printed, so it's still. And they went even everything. When you start 3D printing stuff that starts in a model on a computer, you're kind of like, you might as well keep it in the computer, and because it starts to look, it's like you're creating so much more work for yourself. So they 3D print the things, and now they came up with a process where it can 3D print and paint too, and so it takes. My favorite movie 3D animated is still Nightmare Before Christmas because everything was hand sculpted still, and in fact it was the first time they had camera moves, but yet I think it was still 35 millimeter film.
There was less robots working on it.
Yeah, and everything was, even Jack had all these heads, just like Coraline, but they were hand sculpted. Every mouse shape.
Yeah, I never knew that about Coraline. That's interesting.
Yeah. The faces were 3D printed, and then same way with box trolls. But it's still cool because it's still stop motion, and it's just the work that goes into it. I think every time they do a film, they say we're never going to do another one. It's just like, but they still do.
Yeah, thankfully they do. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're gonna wrap this up. It's been about an hour, and do you want to tell people where to go to find out what you're doing?
Yeah, the best place is to visit. It's Notebook Babies. If you go on YouTube, just look at my channel. It's just one word, like notebook, and then the word babies. It's I don't know why I came up with that name, but it's funny. I think when like older kids like stuff on it, they feel almost embarrassed because it has such a childish name. They're like, I get all these comments. I'm 18 and I'll admit it, I love this. It's like they're coming out almost. Just like I have to admit it, I love this. I'm sorry. No, I'm like no. I design these things for older kids, really. I mean, and that's most of it is my 5th grade humor, but anyway, yeah, that is the best place to see what I have going on now. When I do something for Sesame Street, I finished it almost a year ago. It's still not going to air till July, so I can't put it up until it airs once. So I have some stuff that's ready to go, but I just can't. They don't want you to show it to anyone,
right?
Until it's ready to go. But I do want to do maybe a making of feature, because if I have this one film, the stop motion crayons, that I have a scene that I don't have online yet, but it's where the rigs are still attached to the crayons, or still supported by the rigs, so you can see all the stuff I had to paint out frame by frame, and it's just intense, all the stuff that was there that is no longer in the film. And so look for that. I'm gonna put some, try to maybe do some more of my process too.
Yeah, I think people enjoy that, like especially with you engaging with them and talking. I think that's what people really go for, and that maybe those could be 10 minutes long and help you get that revenue from YouTube and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's been my thought process, and also maybe doing some live action mixed with animation shows too. Like maybe have the animation and then go to something live action.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And then to add some content and
look up Irby's Fun World. That's something I made that would be perfect for that. Check that out. I think you'd enjoy it. There's like 3 episodes up. It's ERBE Fun World Irby's.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's me dressed up as a scientist. I guess did I ever make you watch it, Jeff?
Now that you mentioned what it was, I didn't recognize the name, but yeah, Irby's Fun World. It's pretty good.
It's just something we only made a few of them, but I would, if something like that had animation to it, that'd be cool. But maybe it'll inspire you, or maybe we'll team up.
Yeah, be cool.
Awesome. Well, great having you, Tony, and great catching up with you. I hope to see you soon, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was really awesome getting the inside scoop into kind of behind the scenes of some of the Sesame Street stuff. I was really interested in that. I grew up on Sesame Street. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have. So it's great to speak to someone who's actually, been in the business. It's pretty awesome. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for coming out.
My pleasure. Yeah, no problem. It's been great.